Garrett gets a confession out of Dr. Parmack just by staring at him for 4 hours. Odo can turn himself into a Vicarian Razorback, and Eddington returns, and then promptly sabotages the Defiant's cloaking device. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine Season 3, Episode 21, The Die is Cast, directed by David Livingston and written by Battlestar Galactica's own Ronald D. Moore.
Ron Moore, the great one.
That's it. We are in the final episodes of Season 3. It's getting furry nowadays. It's getting furry. How are you, Cirroc?
Yeah, we are in the final episode. This is episode 21, so I guess we got 5 more to go after this.
Right.
I'm doing well. This was the second part of a 2-parter, so last time we got left on a cliffhanger unexpectedly because I thought it was going to be wrapped up.
Yeah, because it didn't say part 1 or part 2 on it.
Yeah, it didn't say part 1 or part 2, so I was expecting for it to be all wrapped up by that last episode, which was also directed by Avery Brooks, so that we had a whole lot to talk about. And I see that this one is a David Livingston episode, so a little bit different style. Obviously 2 different directors, but I enjoyed the first part of it more than the second part, which is kind of interesting for me.
Yeah, usually the second part's going to have more action and more resolution. So usually people might view a second episode more than a first one, because the first one's going to be build up, twist to be continued, right?
Mm-hmm.
First things first. So our buddy Michael Eddington. Actually, before that, even we're going to get to Michael Eddington in just 1 second. We do want to remind you to go ahead and, subscribe, give us a like, go to patreon.com/the7th rule if you want to throw $1 or a yen our way. If you want the freest way to support us, or just to say, hey, I appreciate that you guys are doing this. It's a good time. Just give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, because 63% of the people viewing our videos aren't even subscribed, and that's practically a crime. So it's not, though, thank goodness. So please hook that up, and we'll all be very happy and thankful. Michael Eddington, do you remember him?
Michael Eddington, he's the security officer in this episode?
Right. Lieutenant Commander, even. He's pretty high up there.
Okay.
He was in a few episodes. It was either at the very beginning of season 3 or the very end of season 2. But, a couple months ago, 2-3 months ago, we had a few episodes with him, and suddenly here he is. He's back. Hi, Eddington. What do you think of him?
Well, first of all, he reminds me of a guy who played in a show called Hunter. Do you remember that show, Hunter?
I do remember that show.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of the lead actor in Hunter, which I used to love all the time. I used to love that show. But no, I thought he was pretty good. He's the double agent in this particular episode.
Well, he's following orders that were given to him directly from the Admiral, because when he was originally transferred over to Deep Space Nine, it's because they didn't fully trust Odo to be the security chief of this giant station, because Odo is not Starfleet. So Starfleet, headquarters was like, we got to have a Starfleet officer at least working in conjunction with it. It's kind of watching over Deep Space Nine, but also kind of keeping an eye on Odo, who is a changeling, by the way. So he's kind of a double agent in that he reports kind of directly to Starfleet admirals, more so than Sisko. And as you saw, that kind of screwed things up for a minute there.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job in this episode. He was definitely relevant, and he had some redeeming qualities that were expressed, I guess, midway through this, where he makes a promise to, uphold his allegiance to Sisko. One of the things I really did like about this episode was Sisko's action, and it was a real decisive action, even though it went against Starfleet and the Admiral's orders. I just like the way he did it. It was really decisive. He knew that the window of time was short, so he had to make a decision very quickly. And he did what I think is honorable about all of the military, which is the idea that no man is left behind.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that I think showed tremendous courage and bravery on his part, and I enjoyed watching that kind of unfold in his own rationale for why it needed to be done.
Yeah, and that's the line that kind of echoed in my head too. It's like, I've never been in the military. I don't know. I don't think you have either. But even those of us that haven't know that line, that nobody gets left behind. Like, it's just not an acceptable course of action. And, thank God, because if you're that person, you're like, you don't have to think, well, are they even going to come back for me or not? Just hang in there. Somebody's going to come looking for you. Even if you're, a bucket of goop and a Cardassian tailor, So that was cool. That was the right decision, even with the Admiral, saying that you better not do it or you're going to get a court martial.
Yeah, I thought it was the right decision, and I like the swiftness that Avery took. I mean, that Sisko takes with making it. It was just like, and there was a moment there actually where they're on the bridge of the Defiant, and Kira says, "Oh, I'm getting a signal. It says that you absolutely cannot go." And I really love the answer that that Sisko gives in that. The response was, "I think that's what you think it says," or something to that.
Yeah. He goes, "You think it says that, but how can you know when it's so badly garbled?" And she's like, like wink, wink.
Yes.
Or as the Germans do. By the way, the way Germans wink is they go like this.
Yeah, that's not the wink you want. But yeah, it was the first time I think garbled was ever used in a Star Trek episode. So shout out to the word garbled.
This episode is brought to you by the word garbled and the letter D.
Yeah. So I like the way that little interaction was great. It was like, yeah, that's what you think it says, right? Because we're about to break all these rules over here, and you're going to help me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those kind of moments. It also showed that he said something to the effect of like, if you want to go on this mission, it's voluntary, it's an optional thing. And I also like the fact that his entire crew was there with him, so nobody turned down that option, right?
And the surprise, of course, was that Eddington was there. That was the guy you wouldn't expect, but now we know why. It's because the Admiral was like, you get on that ship and you sabotage the cloaking device so that they can still defend themselves, but then they got to turn tail and run. Although I would say that not everybody should have gone. Like, for example, I think Kira could have definitely stayed behind, because my first thought is, who's watching the station? Quark? Quark's like, in charge.
Step right up.
Yeah, Quark's in charge. I mean, he's selling the baseball off of Sisko's desk.
Who wants to sit in the captain's chair? Come on, line up.
Literally nobody's there. It's Jake, Nog's off in Starfleet Academy. Keiko's there. Nope, actually Keiko's doing her botany stuff on Bajor. So it's Quark and Sisko and you, Jake Sisko. So you guys could have had your own episode with Rom.
Oh yeah, you should have seen us that day. We were acting it up. The self-sealing stem bolts we got a hold of. But no, I do think somebody should have been left behind to be in charge. Or at least we should have seen that conversation transpire, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Where we're saying, okay, you're in charge.
Right, and the person that should have been left behind was Kira and or Eddington. Eddington, we understand why he ended up going, but I thought Kira should have stayed behind, honestly.
She wasn't really needed for the mission, so yes, she could have been left behind, and you're in charge. I thought that would have been probably a better right for them. It's another funny thing is because it seems like these two episodes both began at the commissary with Bashir eating,
Right.
which is like, it's a little bit old for me, and I don't like when they do the same thing over and over again, especially in repetition. So they usually they've started these last two episodes. The last one, Dr. Bashir eats his food too fast, and that was something that was being talked about by Garrick. Garrick was telling him, "You're eating your food too fast."
Right.
And then this episode starts off with Bashir eating his plumik soup. Plumik?
Plomeek soup again, because I remember that was one of our trivioids once, is he likes to have his plomeek soup hot.
Yeah, so he was eating his plumik soup, this time now with O'Brien. And so they've started these both episodes back to back with the sit down, sitting, Bashir eating essentially. And that to me is just a little bit lazy on the writing, because they should be aware that that's how they started the last episode and mix it up a little bit. Can't be the exact same, hanging out spot and starting an episode exactly the same way. So I thought that's a little bit lazy on the writing side. And I feel like I've seen that in many episodes now. This must be the 10th or 15th time that I've seen an episode start with somebody, usually Bashir, eating.
Well, they do love to have like their little, they start every episode with like a slice of life. Like, oh, here they are hanging out, they're having lunch, and then they're giving us a bunch of fun trivioids. And then warbirds show up, or, Quark's ex-girlfriend shows up, or something happens, and then the episode goes from there. So yeah, what you're saying is let's have a little bit more variety on that first couple minutes. Let's see some darts. Let's see some tennis or
something else. Or they could be eating, but on the go as they're walking down the promenade. So they, like how we would have a burger and just be walking and holding something, or an ice cream cone or whatever. And you could be mobile. You don't have to start exactly at that same place right by the Replimat in the little commissary.
Right. You know what would be cool is if Jake would go visit his dad for lunch sometimes. How fun would that have been? Like he goes into Sisko's office, sits down, and they just split a burger and kind of, maybe toss the ball back and forth and talk. And then and then Jake says, "All right, I got to get back to class." And that would be a great way to open.
That would be a great way to open, and also taking the food somewhere else. It's like they have a rule that you can only eat within this parameter here. But it would be great if Jake said, "Hey, I went to da 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 da, and I brought you back some of those glazed donut things that you like, right, or whatever it is." Don't make that face, Ryan.
What
Don't
face?
Do that to me.
Don't do that to me.
The glazed donut face. But yeah, something like that. Like I brought you back this, and like somebody goes to the store and brings back some pastries or whatever, and you share that. So I think they need to stay away from the sit down, starting the same way at least twice in a row, because it stood out to me. I was like, well, haven't I seen this like before?
That's a great thing. Everybody that's watching in on, say, like YouTube right now, in the comments below, tell us what you think would be a cool opening scene. Like I was saying, Jake Sisko having lunch with his dad, and they're talking. Jake brings glazed donuts because he knows his dad loves glazed donuts, and or maybe you've got somebody going into Garrick's tailor shop and saying, did you hem my pants properly, and whatever like that. There's so many things. You're right, because this isn't a starship where there's only a few things that could be happening. There's an infinite amount of things that could be. You could have Dax and O'Brien at Cargo Bay 3 just counting boxes. Anything.
Yeah, anything. You could have an illegal dice game happening in the corner over there somewhere on the promenade, where these aliens are gathered together to play some weird kind of dice-looking game.
Because there is.
Yeah, and Odo has to break it up. Hey, none of that here. Go to Quarks if you want to gamble.
Mm-hmm.
There could be all kinds of different ways to start the show. I mean, we had the biggest set in the history of Star Trek built, as the promenade. So I just feel like they, sitting there in a seated position, starting with food, is so limited when you have all this happening around you, all these shops and all these things happening. I think it's, they're not taking advantage of it, and it just stood out to me as being repetitive, especially coming after this episode with Improbable Cause, which is the one before this.
Right. But you know what the best part of this conversation is? I and others love all those lunch scenes. Like those are kind of like these legendary things of like the lunches between Bashir and Garrick, but it is true that there's so many things they could do with that, but people do love the Garrick and Bashir conversations. That's kind of like one of the big highlights when looking back on it. Is all the little verbal chess matches that those two have, and how Garrick's always like, but doctor, maybe it's this or maybe it's that, and he's like, oh, come on, Garrick, and they have a little banter.
But I do, and I understand that it's part of the thing that you kind of, familiar with, and it makes you into your comfort place, which I feel like in the Jake and Nog world, in our microcosm of this experience, it was the upstairs,
right,
dangling our feet, looking down from the upper deck of the promenade.
Right.
Which again would be, something to see, would have been nice to have seen up until this point. Hey, Nog, I'll meet you upstairs. Well, let's go have a milkshake or something up there. We're sitting there drinking milkshakes. It could be our hangout / eating the snack spot. Mm-hmm. So there's always ways to just manipulate it and take advantage of such a beautiful set that they designed. I just feel like it's too easy to say, hey, you guys are sitting there having lunch again in the exact same spot that we just had Garrick and Bashir having lunch.
Right.
Yes, yesterday, which would be yesterday in our mind on the show.
It was a great episode for Garrick, or 2 episodes, in that, we get to learn a little bit more about who he is, but also it's Garrick and Odo throughout. And maybe we're jumping ahead here, but very quickly, possibly my favorite line is, where is it? Oh, there it is. My favorite line in this episode is at the very end, when Garrick says, do you know what the sad part is? I'm a very good tailor. And the reason I thought that was the best line is because for many, many, many years, I worked in restaurants. I started off as a busboy, and then a host, and then a waiter and a manager. And then I moved to LA as a musician, and back to a waiter. And I worked as a waiter for years and years and years and years and years, and trying to be a successful musician, and then actor, and then producer. And only recently, a few years ago, was I finally able to quit that and leave that life behind, mercifully. And the thing that would kill me is, so often people that thought they were paying me the highest compliment, or because they liked me or thought that I deserved it, they would say, you're an excellent waiter. Or they'd be like, you're the best waiter. And that was like somebody got like an ice cream scoop and was just scooping out little pieces of my soul, because I'm sitting here trying to be an actor. I'm sitting here trying to do my thing, and people are like, oh boy, you were just made to be a waiter. You're so good at it, And so I definitely felt his pain there. His pain is like, there's nothing more painful than being good at doing something that you don't want to be doing, So I like that one. Somebody in that writer's room knew what they were talking about there. Somebody was drudging it through, and that's not to disparage people that work in the service industry. They deserve so much kudos for what they do, right? I mean, anybody that hasn't done it, we've always said people should work as a waiter for at least 2 weeks, just so that you understand what's going on there. It is not an easy job. Anyway.
Well, I actually had the opposite effect. Maybe I guess because it was something I wanted to do, and you're telling me it's something that is a stepping stone to get to where you want to get to. Mm-hmm. And for me, when I was a waiter / bartender at the restaurant, I was actually proud of myself for being a good waiter. I was like, well, I could do this too. Like, I'm not,
You're right. I hadn't thought of that. It is totally because you were an actor throughout your childhood, and then you're like, I want to do something else. But you kind of created your own restaurant. You were not just like, clocking in for
Yeah,
minimum wage on somebody else's dime, you know?
and you're waiting on somebody. You're waiting on somebody. So the job entails the same thing. You know, I've got to wipe your table down. I'm bringing you water. I'm taking your order.
Right.
I'm filling your wine glass. Whatever it is, and it's the same job. So I actually took pride in the fact that I was a good waiter and a good bartender. When people would tell me that, I would say, "Wow, I can do something else. I'm not just an actor." So it's funny how I saw the exact same thing from the opposite
That's
side.
brilliant. I didn't even think of that when I was saying that. You're right. That is so cool. I think you're crazy, and you probably think I'm crazy, but
You know what?
I think that's awesome.
What I'll tell you is that what I learned about the two things that are very similar is being a people person and interacting and talking with people, and those are the skill sets that translate from one to the other.
Right.
So when I was being a waiter, bartender, whatever you want to call it, I had the time to get to know people. There's a therapy involved with that, either whether it's you're helping somebody get into a date night with their relationship type thing, or you're listening to somebody's problems. It could be a thousand different ways, but there is a ability to interact with people, listening with people, and I think those same skill sets translate to acting. If you're good at on your
Definitely.
feet and you're good at communicating with people, then you'll be good at auditioning and you'll be good at performing on
That's a
stage as
great
well.
point. I used to say when I was working, when I was working as a waiter, I would say, look, I just consider this like an acting job. You know, my call time is 4 p.m. and my role is the happy waiter. Hi,
And
everybody. I'm the happy waiter.
yeah, yeah, it is, and I mean, it's the same skill set.
Mhm.
You're being friendly. You're marketing yourself. You're representing the company. I mean, there's so many different things that are exactly similar to being an actor, which is why a lot of actors are waiters in Los Angeles and Hollywood. So
Right.
it's not an uncommon thing.
No, there's that.
But
I was just gonna say, there's that joke that all the late night talk show hosts say, "Oh, you're an actor, huh? What restaurant do you work
right.
at?"
But for me it was actually a dream to be in the restaurant business, so it's hilarious how
That's
life
awesome. I
works
love it.
sometimes.
So we got to
But
take our.
I can understand your sentiment about Garrick, though, saying it, because he was saying it in the way that you're describing, which is, um, even though it's not what I want to do, I'm actually really good at it.
Mhm.
That's what sucks. So
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
sad part. So we'll take our quick break and we'll come right back. This is a great episode to talk about. Lots of good stuff, and we'll be right back on the seventh rule.